the High Priestess of Hedonism. I invite you back to my chamber for a fantastic conversation with the absolutely amazing Anoothi Vishal. Anoothi is today one of the most significant voices in the food and beverage industry. She is one of the best known, sought after food and wine and travel writers in the country today. So, in the conversation that's going to follow, we'll talk to her about what are the top food and wine trends today. What is it that's going to be on a platter? What is that's going to be in our wine cellars? Also, serious subjects like how has the pandemic affected the industry? What is going to be the course of recovery? And also, how does India compare with the global food and wine destinations? There is so much to talk about this delightful subject of food and wine, and there's no better person than Anoothi Vishal to talk to us about it. Welcome to the show once again, Anoothi. So happy to have you with us today.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Fantastic. And, wine has become such an important part of Indian life now, earlier on, it was not so much. We were a hard drinks country, so to say. But wines have really taken over our lives in so many respects. You're alone at home, you want to open a bottle of wine, you're going out, you'll again, order some great wines for the table. You want to, celebrate an occasion, you'll pop a bottle of champagne. So with that sort of advent, wine writing has also increased. So how does one train to become a good wine writer and critic?
So again, one, of course, is the knowledge aspect. Yes. Again, knowledge about wine has evolved so much from the time when the first few wine dinners were happening in the country. Correct. Now people, people travel to vineyards and they see the process of it, and there's so much, there's just so much more exposure. So one is, of course, that just the sheer knowledge about different winemaking styles in different parts of the world. Including in India, because India now produces some very good quality wine as well. But I think too, also, and this I believe personally, make it more approachable, make it, something which is more engaging. Earlier, I think, a lot of the older wine writing in the country and internationally, of course, focused too much on the rules of drinking wine. And in India, that's never worked. Also internationally, in newer markets like Canada, in many in the US, etc., that sort of approach doesn't work, and people are doing really fantastic things with wine, and writing on wine. And they actually, I have a friend who is in Canada, and she's a sommelier, but she's also an influencer, and she keeps posting a lot of stuff on Instagram. And sometimes when I see her posts, I'm like, this is how it should be in India as well, because, she would talk about gender, she would talk about race relations, and relate it all to wine. So I think we need that kind of approach, even when we're talking about something like wine, so that it just does not remain something which is very elitist or very limited, but it finds a resonance with a much larger audience and a younger audience.
Correct, correct. So what is it that she's doing differently? And what when you say she talks about gender or the racial impact, what is it that she's saying, vis-a-vis the wine business? What has really...
Well, for instance, a simple post where you talk about valuing diversity, when you're talking about race relations, you peg it with something which has recently happened, like we saw Black Lives Matter. Yes. And, it was in that context. And then she goes on to talk about diversity in wine as well, and how we must value that. And I think that's a brilliant link to make, because this is something, which is current, which is happening, which people feel about deeply, because these are values that you're championing. What in fact, she is doing, and which actually a lot of writers should start doing, is putting their own values across in their copy. Now, if you believe in diversity, talk about food and wine in those terms, because food and wine, of course, is also political, it's cultural. And why not view it like that? You know, and then therefore have many more people who respond to it similarly.
Correct, correct, correct.
I think that's what would be a
Yeah,
very
no,
interesting approach.
that's very interesting, absolutely. And I think a lot of, not a lot, but a few wine writers like yourself and a few more internationally have been trying to really, bring down wine from the womb of its, cellars, deep cellars, and taking it off the idea of it being very sort of, upmarket and very fancy, to bringing it down to the level of people, and letting people relate to wine like they would to any other beverage, and really just enjoy it, rather than attach a value of snobbery to it, but to really enjoy the wine, make it a part of their lives, and pair it with the kind of food they want to. Isn't it that has been happening over the years as well?
Yes, I think, and that's a much more refreshing and modern approach, because I mean, this whole value system where you were snobbish because you could afford to buy, say a 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 rupee bottle is now out completely. I don't think a lot of the millennials value that. They value experience. Gen Y, which is even younger than millennials, place, they have their own value system. And this very materialistic way of looking at the world certainly does not fit in with their value system. So therefore, if you enjoy a beverage, you should enjoy a beverage because you truly respond to it.
Yes.
There is something that you feel passionately about.
Correct.
And in fact, that should come across in any writing as well, because that's the whole point. You don't want to create barriers where you're leaving out people. You want people to come and, view your world, partake of your world. And you can't do that, without demolishing some of these ridiculous barriers. And, I mean, this whole very structured, very rule-centric way of looking at wine is very old world. It does not work any longer.
True.
We don't drink wine like that.
True. So should the young people also look at, doing wine appreciation courses if they want to be a wine writer, or, attaching themselves with a sommelier, or going to, wineries, though that's a fantastic, travel goal as well. But should that be thought out by the young people who want to enter the area of wine critiquing and wine writing?
Yes, I absolutely think so. In fact, not just wine, but other spirits like gin as well, which is, which has been trending quite a bit in these last 5 years. And in fact, I mean, I just did a story yesterday,
Yes.
And it was about these new gin entrepreneurs in the country, and I was speaking to some of them, and it was just so refreshing to speak to them, because they are all in their mid-20s or late 20s. Many of them actually got so interested in wine first, and then in gin while studying abroad, that they took time off their work, whatever they had joined, and then actually went and studied. One guy studied winemaking in the US, and somebody else studied distilling in London, which is the epicenter for gin.
Correct.
So I think, the world has opened up also quite a bit, and people are following their hearts, and, whatever strikes their fancy, and, whatever they are passionate about. And that's just so refreshing. It's just so, that just the sense of energy, it has completely changed. And I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. So to encapsulate what you're saying for the benefit of the young viewers who will be watching this, is really, if you want to be good at anything, if you want to be a good food writer or a wine writer, or just, hone your craft of writing, then you have to read a lot, you have to, experience a lot, and you have to read variedly, and you have to think a lot as well. Is that what you're saying?
Perfect. Absolutely.
Yes. So that's the touchstone troika to really, practice make one's own, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, Anoothi, you have you don't cease to amaze me with how much you can do and how much brilliance you have brought to each of the segments that you have indulged yourself in. Really, and I say it with lot of honesty about how I've seen you evolve. You have also become a very important travel writer. You engage in a lot of travel writing too. So, what are the nuts and bolts of being a travel writer per se?
So travel happened to me, of course, again by chance because I was writing on food, and so I suppose it was just a natural offshoot of that. Um, Travel also kind of changed me very deeply, very, very deeply, because I very distinctly remember this trip some years ago, almost a decade ago, to Italy, and one night going off to sleep in a very small remote village,
Yes.
and then just experiencing this sheer sense of freedom and sheer sense of potential to just do anything, because here you are in another country where you could be anyone you chose to be, and just to it was just a very strange experience, very valuable experience, which I think kind of changed something within me.
Yes.
So I look at travel as a transformative experience. Travel as something, which you need to go which you need to experience. It's not like collecting a stamp on your passport, which is what some of travel writing is today, where, you go and see the sights. It's really not that. It is immersing into something, immersing into the spirit of a place, immersing into the culture, the local culture of a place, and then how that transforms you or how that impacts you, and being able to communicate that to a larger audience. I think we don't really have that kind of travel writing. I mean, I try to do that as best as I can, but I think it would be interesting again to have travel writing like that. Yeah, and not have travel writing which tells you to go, see these sites or eat at these restaurants or check this off your bucket list.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
here's hoping we'll get that.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Or go to a Murano glass factory and see how the glass is blown.
Exactly.
So beautifully, that's one hell of an immersive experience, isn't it? And so
Yes,
many of them
yes.
from different cultures, different societies, really, different way people
Absolutely.
live, and fabulous. Tell me, Anoothi, how do Delhi, Bombay, and I'm very stubborn about calling it Bombay, I'm not letting it go, Bengaluru, Kolkata, how do they compare with the global food and wine destinations?
I think this is a very exciting time for India.
Yes.
And, well, till at least 2019, I think there were just such fabulous concepts coming up. And in general, I don't think India's ever had luxury dining per se. Because one, we don't have that kind of disposable income. Two, the kind of travelers we get are really not, people who spend that much money within restaurants of a certain kind in India. So we've not really had, luxury dining. We've had expensive restaurants, but the most exciting stuff was happening in these mid-level sort of restaurants, with a lot of younger chefs coming, sometimes, studying abroad or interning with chefs abroad and coming back. And then really doing it, I mean, of course, as a business, because when you open a restaurant, it is a business,
Yes.
but also just pushing the envelope creatively without really putting, too much thought in what the customer wants. Because actually, we were at that stage where any kind of food would find customers, or whether it was the traditional sort, it would have its own sort of customers. But, even very creative experiments would find enough people to make it sustainable. So I think, that is a very exciting time. And I hope after the pandemic, we can go back to it.
Would it also be a thought to say that it's not just these capital cities, but also some, little towns and nooks and valleys which could be doing, cuisine and food traditions beautifully. That would compare very well with what is happening globally too. Because India is so huge and so sort of,
Yeah.
expansive and so creatively enriched that there could be some fantastic things happening around. Is that your experience too? Is that your reading as well?
Well, also because, I mean, a lot of these smaller towns have disposable incomes
Yes.
where people are actually, looking at food as entertainment. They want newer things. They aspire to newer concepts. So they're open. They're open-minded, which is, very important. And therefore some of these concepts were coming up. Rents were lower in these smaller towns, which made it easier perhaps to open restaurants than in very cluttered and very expensive metros. And you're right, because even places like Kanpur, like Nagpur, we've seen I mean Jaipur, of course, we've seen Goa, the way Goa has emerged as such a dining destination.
Yes, yes.
So a lot of these, non-traditional metros were actually having this completely new dining culture.
True, true. Now, sadly, how has the pandemic affected the industry, Anoothi? And when do we see the industry getting back on track, both financially and growth-wise? What is your guesstimate?
So the pandemic was really, it was devastating in the first few months.
Yes,
I felt especially bad, for people who had at the mid level, who lost their jobs.
yes,
And, this is an industry which is just so dependent on, human interaction. It's so labor intensive.
correct.
It gives so much employment to people. And, all those people suddenly found themselves out of jobs. I mean, even now, they don't know what to do because restaurants are still operating at half their capacities, at less than half their capacities.
Yes,
So it's a very, very tough time. People are doing whatever it takes just to survive. A lot of them have got into deliveries, but deliveries, unfortunately, can never make as much money as restaurants, because restaurants obviously are about experience, and they can price themselves a certain way. So all of that will take time, Aruna. We can just hope that the situation normalizes sometime later next year. And like we've already said, going to restaurants is something which is intrinsic to our society, because human beings are social beings.
yes,
However, when that situation becomes better for restaurants to start functioning again,
yes.
is anyone's guess, because it's directly related to how we control the pandemic.
True, true, true. And one of the things that has been worrying me thinking about those operators is that, one heard this happened in August, I think, 1st August or thereabouts, when the Oberoi, opened its doors. Several other hotels have been following suit. Hotels or resorts and other destinations have opened much before that. Restaurants have been slowly and steadily trying to open their gates. But my worry is that, when they are opening up, and they have a meager footfall happening, they will be running on, on a big steam, because they have to, have the aircon on, they have to, get the supplies in, they'll be paying the pays have to be paid, they have to, run a decent menu, for the guests to walk in. How are they going to sort of, balance out the bottom line in such a scenario when, it's difficult to match up, between the demand and the selling power, or the lack of it, right now.
Which is why so many of them have had to shut down, even internationally, because you really, some of them, see, typically, because, I mean, this is not an industry where some hotels, of course, have very deep pockets and they can afford to do all of this. However, when there are smaller players, none of them have this kind of money. They don't have deep pockets. And also, then just the money flow becomes an issue. And then, for how long does one go on like that, especially if it's not backed by, a big company, which can afford to wait it out. So essentially, it's unfortunately, we are in a situation where the bigger players are in a position to wait it out. And I mean, because they have their also brand standards, their brand name, etc. So they are running their operations in a certain way. Others are all desperately hanging in there. Right. Some unfortunately have had to just completely rework their business models, right. Just work on very, very lean sort of a staff strength and structure, and and just survive, hope to survive. Some have had to shut. So of course, we will be faced with a reality where a lot of restaurants, say 30% of restaurants, will never open again.
That's right. That's right. That's one bleak reality which is staring in our face, Yeah. And what you said also about, reworking the business model and also reinventing oneself. I had this, business friend based in Lecce in Puglia, Italy, the southern part of Italy. And he runs two famous, cookery schools there. And with the pandemic, he's had to shut down both the schools. So what he's done is he's also a master sommelier. And what he's now done is that he's taken a course in filmmaking. So he's now trying to develop a contract with BBC, and right now he's busy shooting episodes for a show on southern Italian cuisine and wines when the pandemic sort of eases out and things begin to get back to normal, and before the school opens, reopens. So that's one way of also looking at things afresh and reinventing one's own self to really keep in business, to keep in the reckoning, and to hopefully have the finances coming in.
That's true, absolutely. Yeah. That's how, that's all we can do. We can work on ourselves and try and explore newer things and newer ideas, because, now that we all have to, also people have the time to, but really there, I mean, unfortunately, nothing else to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Has there been something new that you have been trying as well? Adding to your armor of skills, any new quiver being added?
Oh goodness, what? I'm always trying new things.
Yes,
I'm always trying new things. So this year, I don't know whether it's directly related to the situation, because, writing, fortunately, you can do out of your home. Yes. And, I mean, for me, it's personally been, I can work out of home, fortunately. But, I started a column in Hindi. So it may not be directly related to the pandemic per se, but then I think it's just interesting, because I also see a lot of growth in media in the regional languages.
Correct.
And this opportunity just came my way, and I thought, why not do this? And like we were just talking about these smaller towns with a new gastronomic culture. So this is one way of reaching that audience, which I would never have reached with the English media press. So I'm quite, and the kind of viewership, the kind of readership that you have is astonishing. Sometimes when I see those numbers, it's incredible. So it's just something new. I mean, I was teaching some kids, some creative writing and poetry appreciation. So, I mean, these were interesting new things to do. I'm not doing them long term. I mean, it was just like a one-off thing, but it was just interesting, and it's an experience.
So true. And what vehicle is that you're writing for? What is that Hindi publication that you're writing for now?
Navbharat Times.
Navbharat Times.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I have to thank you personally for doing that, because really, and I tell you why. Being convent educated as a lot of us are, we for a long time, we used to, carry the albatross of, Raj mentality on our shoulder, and we would, look down on the regional languages without really being aware and acknowledging that Indians are one set of people who are naturally, polyglots. They are multilingual just by virtue of being born in this wonderful country with its, diverse culture. And we would not really appreciate that, when we were growing up. Hindi is such a beautiful language, and for a long time, one would not. And now when I see people like you, I know a few other writers and, new authors who are as adept in English as their own Hindi or Urdu or their own sort of regional mother tongue. And that's so fabulous, really, because the numbers are there, the awareness is there, the audience is there for writing to be read and to be able to communicate in that language with utmost, expertise is really fantastic, really. So thank you for, picking up on Hindi and working in that language. So important, so important. Such a beautiful language it is, isn't it, Anoothi?
It is, and I'm very excited about it because, the media landscape has been changing so much. So I see that, there is that audience, like you're saying, waiting for you to actually serve them something which is more meaningful, which is better, higher quality. And then why shouldn't you, because yes, India is like a continent. We have so many languages, so many cultures. And why not partake of all of that?
That's right. No, fabulous. Thank you. And also, laughably, even today, Indian food internationally is what? Chicken tikka masala or dosas or the Firang version of what a curry is. What can we do to change the status quo? And how do we, begin to showcase the diversity of our cuisine to the world? What should exactly be done to bring about these changes, elsewhere?
So I have a confession to make. I start ranting when somebody mentions the word curry because there is no curry, right? I mean, India has rasa, India has iguru, India has pulusu, India has, we call gravies or dishes by different names. We have sukha. So, if what is curry? I don't understand curry. So, curry is just a way of looking at food in the language of somebody else. And I really, feel very strongly about it. Why do we do this? Why can't we take our own food and talk about it in its own language, in its own vocabulary? And of course, then what it is, genuinely. Yes. So if it is, even if it is chaat, even if it is pani puri, the water of that, is it only chili water? No. I mean, we have such a diversity of spices. It's human laced. So why aren't we talking about the complexity of Indian food and Indian cuisines, really, because there is no one Indian food. Actually, because it's one of the, it's so refined, it's so complex that it would possibly take a lifetime of learning about it. And there we are only talking about chicken tikka masala. That's absolutely shameful.
Correct. Or dosa at best, right? What is the etymology of curry, Anoothi? Is it Englishman's term then, and that's been carried down from generation to generation?
Of course, it came up during the colonial times. And, some accounts say, of course, it comes from the word, the Tamil word for chili water, which I assume would be rasam. And, then everything became curry. And I have some very old cookbooks where you actually see also the genesis of curry powder. Because, when you cook in India, in Indian kitchens, there is no curry powder. We use spices very differently. We use spices first as a base note, then we add something while it's cooking, and then we use something as a top note, as an aromat. So it's a layered process. It's almost like a scent or a perfume sculpture that you're creating. And then here you have curry powder where you're bunging in, 20, 30 things without any rationale. So, I have a 19th century cookbook which has curry powders, distinguished according to the presidency towns. So there is a Madras curry powder, there's a Bengal curry powder, there is a Bombay curry powder. But there is no rationale to why they are what they are. And it's just so random. And unfortunately, I just feel, that is the kind of communication about Indian food that's gone out to the world. And why are we not correcting it? We need to correct it.
Absolutely. And is curry a sort of, anglicized, distorted form of an original Hindi or Indian word? Has it come from some?
Kari, Tamil word, Kari,
Oh,
Kari.
oh, and that became curry, and that became the all sort of, composing, all sort of omnipresent curry. Is that right? Oh my God.
Yes, and then the curry traveled everywhere too. So now you have the Thai curries. But then even in Thailand, it was only the outsiders who called them Thai curries.
Correct.
And they had their own words for it. And of course, then you have the Japanese curry,
Yes.
which again is a very colonial construct. It only came about in the 20th century.
Correct.
So it's very interesting how, that's a story of its own, and how the cult of the curry has grown around the world, except in India, because we don't have curry.
That's, oh, marvelous. I'm sure people will be surprised to learn that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Anoothi, if there are, and I'm sure there are a bunch of them, what would you, which ones would you, list out as best known Indian restaurants abroad? To your mind, whether it's in New York,
Oh,
or
that
it's in
is
London, or it's in Bangkok, Can you name some important Indian restaurants who are flying the flag high?
No, a lot of them actually are doing that. Even restaurants that are not so famous. See, I really like Indian accent, and Indian accent in New York really was doing really well. I mean, I was there in London last year, and I did one, a Kai's promotion at Indian Accent London, which was really well received there. Unfortunately, the London restaurant shut because of the pandemic. But there are so many others, I mean, Ritu Dalmia, for instance, we began our conversation with a mention of her. But I think her idea is absolutely fantastic, because in a city like Milan, which is also, Italy is very traditional when it comes to the acceptance of international cuisines, but that's changing in a city like Milan. And she has a fantastic Indian restaurant, Chittamani, there, very new, just 2 years old, and she gets a primarily Italian audience. So I mean, of course, London traditionally has been the epicenter, and you have places like Banaras, etc., which are fantastic, and they are doing so well. But with London, we've always had that kind of a historical connect. So you would assume that restaurants do well in a city like that. But then you see cities in the US, very small towns in the US, and they are experiencing a new kind of beyond curry Indian food. You see something like this in Milan. I believe Ritu was also planning to go to places like Portugal, etc., with her restaurants, with Indian food. And I think that would be fantastic, because, here is a newer wave of Indian food as it is by Indian chefs, without pandering to a certain palate, and people getting to experience
Absolutely. I mean, the ball that the Punjabi sisters, set rolling with their chutney Mary and their Veera Swami, I think, that should have really caught on and gained momentum, which I hope in times to come will happen.
It's doing very well, even now. Yes. Last year I visited all of them, and they, of course, they are luxury restaurants, so they get a certain kind of an audience. But they're still fantastic, and they're doing so well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, look into your crystal ball and tell me, what is the future of the food business in India, and what changes and trends, can we expect to see in the time to come as well?
See, I think home chefs are doing so much. This has been the year of home chefs. So we are going to see more collaborations between restaurants and home chefs in the country, even within restaurants. And some of that has already started, but I see much more of that post the pandemic. I mean, of course, regional Indian cuisines have been on a roll for the last 2-3 years, and this will continue. I think the Indian audience wants something different, yet something familiar. And we are fortunate because we have so much diversity in our own country, so that's not changing for sure. Let's see how luxury. I would be very interested in seeing how luxury restaurants do. I personally feel how the pandemic may impact food is that we'll get higher quality of food because, and perhaps more ethical food, where people down the rung are getting paid more. The real cost of food is reflecting on your plates. All these things, ingredients are being sourced in a more ethical way. So I see that catching up as well.
That is fabulous. That's a fabulous thing about the ethical, way of doing things as well in the food business. No, fantastic. And
Yeah.
what are the global food and wine trends today, Anoothi? What are the prominent?
Oh, the pandemic has changed quite a lot,
Yes.
Aruna. But I again think that this whole thing is something which is very important, which a lot of people are thinking about.
Anoothi,
You
may
know,
I ask you to repeat yourself? We lost the audio just a wee bit, a little while back.
okay,
So could you please start answering the
okay.
question again? Yes, better now.
So, this thing about ethics and food is something that we'll see globally as well.
Yes.
Because, globally, I think, across board in different markets, the trend was for for a lot of restaurants at the middle level to be dishing out food which was actually priced cheaper to what it cost to really put it on the table. And that now, the pandemic seems to have changed that because the focus is on more ethical ways of sourcing, again, paying people fairly, and and not being caught up in this sort of a bubble where private equity is just funding your enterprise and you're going on spreading without really looking at your bottom lines. So, the whole change in this business model will mean more ethical dining all round. I mean, I think globally, post the pandemic, we'll see that. Uh, Restaurants would have shut, a lot of this private equity investment would kind of also, wane. So we hope to see more individualistic restaurants also coming up where, like the old fashioned restaurants where you have a passion and, the chef has a certain way, a certain philosophy of looking at food and that's going out. And rather than being just a very commercial sort of a chain, which I think people were beginning to get, kind of fed up with. So these two things for sure.
Yes.
Luxury, again, a lot of people are questioning. I know a lot of chefs are questioning whether it's important to feed just the top 1% of the population,
Quite right.
given so much inequality now that we've seen.
Right.
So that may change as well, where we are looking at food which is food for all rather than, food for just very expensive food that only a few people can buy.
That's right. And what will be the flavors of the season when the market opens up, in terms of what cuisines are going to, get on, race ahead and, get on top of our taste buds really? Is it going to be Spanish or Portuguese or what do you think is going to be the new wave, the next wave really? And what countries are going to be, stronger in terms of being wine suppliers to the human palate in time to come?
I think local cuisines, wherever those, whatever those markets are, I think right now, absolutely the focus is on supporting local businesses, on also, procuring local stuff, drinking local wine. So, I mean, I think we can safely say a lot of local cuisines. However, I mean, considering that I am from India, I would think why not Indian food? It was kind of on an upswing. And what is stopping us? Also there's this whole interest in Ayurveda, in the goodness of spices, etc. And that may hold us in good stead. So let's see.
Lovely, lovely. That's right. And that's one thing that one would love to see in terms of, getting back, in terms of also health. Our kind of food has a lot to do with how, well, the basic philosophy in terms of, sattvic, tamasic, and what's the third one? There's another one, right? Rajasic. Yeah, Rajasic. And to really bring in Ayurveda into our daily lives in terms of how, and it need not be boring, it can be really an interesting part of our cuisine development too.
See, anyway, the way we cook Indian food in all our kitchens is according to seasonality, is also, you know, how we spice food intuitively is based in Ayurveda. So, you know, it's just if we communicate that internationally, I don't see why it shouldn't pick up. And also people are very interested in it. I mean, when I did a small festival in Milan as well
Yes.
last year, and everyone asked me about Ayurvedic benefits of Indian food. So I mean, I think this is only going to increase.
Correct, correct. And with the pandemic now, people realizing the importance of our good old herb, which is turmeric, and how that's
Yeah,
being seen as an antidote to the virus, isn't it? I mean, have
yeah.
turmeric water, put it in milk, which was told to us by our grannies and great grandmothers. So yeah, that resurgence should be happening as well, is what you're saying too, isn't it?
Exactly.
Fantastic. For a long, long time, Anoothi, one of the biggest laments with me has been the lack of adherence to quality, in whether it is in writing or it's in a restaurant business or any other field of work. Why is quality not given the kind of importance it should be, and why is it so hard to maintain? Not
So
an easy
many,
question.
so many
Yes,
layers to this
correct,
question.
correct.
However, in the restaurant context, I
Yes,
think restaurants in India were primarily playing on price, also because of the kind of market we operate in, where people don't really, where eating out is something new to most people, was seen as luxury. People have disposable incomes, but I mean, if they have 300 rupees, they would want to split it over 3 occasions,
yes,
and spend, just 100 rupees each per occasion. So, I mean, the disposable income was smaller. The number of times people are eating out is fewer, but they would like, so there's aspiration. But, I mean, therefore it has to be budgeted more strictly. So these were the market realities for restaurants to be working in. Now, when you're playing on price, it is but obvious that you are going to cut down somewhere. And then you're not playing on quality. You're not calling people because you say that I have the best such and such dish. You're calling people because I have the cheapest such and such dish. Now, how you make that cheapest dish, therefore, maybe at the expense of quality, and which is one of the reasons why we didn't really have that much quality.
that's right. No, that's a very, very wise and stable answer to give. Also, I think in our country, it's also population, but we are not the only country which is not, adhering to quality so much. Is it also the person who is the consumer? It is our fault that we do not expect that kind of quality. Because if we were expecting it, companies would have to, bend over backwards to be able to give that to us. Is that something that you see as well? We are ourselves shortchanging, our own sort of demand?
Yes, I think it's a bit of both, and actually, I do answer this in fair detail in the book Business on a Platter. One of the chapters deals with it. Now, I think it's both a demand and supply thing. So even in say, in a place like Hong Kong, where there's a lot of street food, where there are cheap places where people
Yes,
go and eat.
yes,
Even at those places, there is a certain quality that your diner expects, and you cannot go below that.
correct.
And the food is really good, even if you're paying a cheaper price for it. In India, yes, that is a problem with the consumer. Now, my analysis of that was in the book,
Yes,
that we tend to eat quality meals at home because a lot of us still cook at home regularly. So we are eating, fresh produce, fresh ingredients. We are cooking it ourselves in a certain way. And if you see homes in India, they're very conscious about what are they buying. Even people without means, they will buy, the best that they can afford for their food. So my analysis was that we tend to eat quality in our homes, but when we go out, we're seeking entertainment. And then we are not really bothered about the quality of food. It should just taste good. So now, you can add ketchup to it, you can add dahi and salt to it. Anything which just tantalizes your taste buds is okay. And you're not really, too bothered about what oil it's been fried in, or whether it's been done properly, it's been spiced properly, all of that. It's just entertainment for you. So, that was my analysis of how consumers behave in India. Maybe that'll change. On the other hand, we also had a problem with people producing quality, because, you're right, our audience doesn't expect better. So chefs are not pushed to produce quality. I have been to, again, I'll be blunt. I've been to, restaurants which were the talk of the town, bars which were the talk of the town, and they have served things, which were supposed to be their interpretations of street food, but which was worse than any street food you would get anywhere. And how was that being even accepted by people? Is anyone's guess. So chefs, I think, got complacent. They were not pushed to excel. And a lot of that was happening. Anything just passed muster if a place was trendy.
That's right. My God, there is so much I want to talk to you about. There's so many things I want to hear. Really, have you, waxed eloquent about, from quality to hygiene, to inspection standards, to hotels versus street food, to, consumer demands and how that vacillates from one end of the continuum to the other. There's so much, really. But I have to cap up this session, but before I end this enchanting conversation, Anoothi, we are infamous here on this channel of the High Priestess of Hedonism, for making everybody sing. Everybody sings for their supper here. So, but we are going to request you to, recite a few of your favorite lines of poetry, if you please, Anoothi.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I think we had a wonderful conversation. Thank you for having me on your show, Aruna.
Thank you.
I was wondering what, you warned me that you will, make me speak a few lines of my, my favorite poem.
Yes.
Now, I've been reading poetry purely for pleasure more recently. And I love the romantics. I love William Blake. So, this is a poem all of us have read in school, but I'm going to just recite. I just love the rhythm of words. I just love the imagery. It's incredible. It's written in the late 18th century, but it can just still resonate with us. And I think that's the power of poetry.
Absolutely. And Blake is fantastic. I'm glad you chose that. Really, please.
Oh, yeah. It's just very old fashioned, but I think, some of the best poetry was at that time. And this is, of course, the Tiger, his most, apart from Kubla Khan, his most famous short poem. And it's Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what the shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain, in what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp, dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears, and watered heavens with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? I just love it.
Lovely. And you recited it so well. Thank you for choosing that, composition. Fantastic, really nice. And I must tell people that you're also trained in Hindustani classical music. That's a...
You're not going to make me sing now.
That's for another time. I threaten you, adequately enough. Ladies and gentlemen, Anoothi, thank you so much really for today's, for giving me time, for being just the way you are, and for sharing all your, fantastic knowledge and wisdom and information and just saying just such wonderful things really. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Aruna. Such a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to end the session. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Anoothi Vishal. Anoothi wears too many hats, all brightly successful. She has branched out remarkably in new areas. She is now also a food curator, a drinks designer, an author of two marvelous books, very well received, a teacher in this lockdown period, and a very significant food historian. But to hear about all that, we are going to request Anoothi to come join us for another stellar episode in some time to come. So thank you. Before we let you go, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel of the High Priestess of Hedonism so that you don't miss out another exciting episode. Be good, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. Bye for now.